Snoop Dogg followed an employee home. What he found will shock you. Snoop Dogg had always been known as the laid-back rap legend, but behind the scenes, he had a growing concern for the people who worked under his name. One late October night, as he wrapped up a studio session at Dreamwave Records, something caught his attention, something that would change the way he viewed corporate responsibility forever. As he stepped outside, the night air crisp against his skin, he exchanged a quick word with a security guard named Michael. "How's the little one sleeping?" Snoop asked, remembering last week's conversation. Michael gave a tired but proud smile. 3 hours at a time, but worth every minute. This was the kind of connection Snoop craved, not for PR, but because deep down, he felt something was off. Inside his office, his assistant Rachel started briefing him on business updates, but he cut her off. "Before that, show me last month's employee satisfaction reports," he said. When she offered a summary, he shook his head. "Nah, I want the raw data. All of it." Something wasn't sitting right with him. Between meetings, album discussions, and logistics planning, Snoop kept glancing at his employees through the glass walls. "How well do we really know them?" he finally asked his head of HR, David Patterson. David hesitated. "We run surveys, performance reviews." "Nah, man. I mean really know them. What happens when they clock out?" David adjusted his tie, looking uncomfortable. "With respect, Snoop, that's not typically within our scope." "Maybe it should be," Snoop said. That night, he ordered a new internal communication system, not to spy, but to listen. He set up alerts for words related to hardship or struggle. He wanted to know if any of his employees needed help. Then, during a board meeting, his phone buzzed. He ignored it. Then it buzzed again. And again. Frustrated, he finally checked it, and what he saw made his stomach drop. A flagged message from the company forum. "Does anyone have any leftover food from the cafe? I can work an extra hour in exchange." Posted just moments ago. The name attached to the message? Lydia Martinez. Something about the wording stopped him in his tracks. The way it was phrased professionally, but with an undertone of quiet desperation. Snoop immediately pulled up her file. Engineering Department. Level 3 clearance. Hired 18 months ago. Perfect attendance. Multiple commendations. Then he saw her time logs. "That can't be right," he muttered. Rachel appeared in the doorway. "Everything okay?" "These time logs, she's been working double shifts for 3 months straight?" Rachel checked her tablet. "Yeah. Every day, minimal breaks." Snoop's frown deepened. An engineer working 16-hour days, producing exceptional work, yet she was offering extra labor just for food? Pull up her last performance review. Rachel hesitated. She was scheduled for a raise last month, but she postponed the meeting. Snoop's jaw clenched. Why would someone working that hard pass up a raise? "Show me security footage from her workstation." The cameras revealed a young woman, hunched over her desk, dark hair tied back in a messy ponytail, exhaustion visible in every movement. Snoop stood up. "I need to see where she lives." What he found at her apartment would shake him to his core and expose a shocking reality about corporate care that no one talks about. Like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. Should companies do more to truly understand their employees' struggles? Let's start a conversation that could change workplaces across the world. Snoop Dogg followed an employee home. What he discovered will shock you. Even through the grainy security feed, it was obvious Lydia was exhausted. She rubbed her eyes, checked her phone, then quickly refocused on her work. Rachel's voice broke the silence. "Snoop, should I forward this to HR?" He didn't answer right away. Lydia had just picked up her empty coffee cup, stared into it for a moment, then set it down with a quiet disappointment that hit him harder than he expected. "No," he said finally. "This one's different. This one. I need to understand myself." He pulled up the employee forum again. No one had responded to Lydia's message. The night shift crew was smaller, and most of the cafeteria staff had already gone home. His cursor blinked in the reply box. He could have ordered food for her right then and there, but something told him this wasn't about a single meal. Rachel, where is she right now? A few keystrokes later, a map appeared on the screen. Section E, workstation 247. She's been there since her second shift started at 7 p.m. Snoop stood up, straightening his jacket. Cancel all my morning meetings. Every last one. Rachel hesitated. What exactly are we looking for? Snoop watched Lydia on the screen again. She had just pulled a small photo from her desk drawer, looked at it for a long moment, then quickly put it away as her supervisor walked past. The truth, he said simply. We're looking for the truth. His phone buzzed again. Another message from Lydia in the forum. Never mind about the food. I'm fine. Sorry to bother everyone. If anything, that message only solidified his decision. Something was very wrong. Rachel called after him. Snoop, what are you going to do? He checked his watch. First, I'm going to wait. Then, I'm going to follow her home. Is that wise? Probably not. But it was necessary. The next few hours crawled by. He buried himself in work, but his eyes kept drifting to the security feed. Lydia barely moved, completely absorbed in her tasks. He could only imagine how hungry she must have been. Then his phone lit up. Rachel had sent him everything she could find on Lydia Martinez. As he read, the pieces of a much bigger puzzle started falling into place. Her social media presence had virtually disappeared 3 months ago, the same time her double shifts began. She had recently moved from a decent apartment complex to a rougher part of town. And the most concerning detail, regular payments to a medical facility called New Horizon Medical Center. The puzzle pieces were there, but they didn't quite fit together. Not yet. Then, finally, movement on the security feed. Lydia was packing up, carefully organizing her papers, powering down her computer. Even after a 16-hour shift, she took the time to leave everything in perfect order. Snoop grabbed his coat. Dave, he spoke into his phone. Bring the car around. And let's keep this between us. As he walked through the quiet building toward the parking lot, the weight of what he was about to do settled in. Following an employee home wasn't just unusual, it was potentially inappropriate. Maybe even illegal. But as he watched Lydia push through the exit doors ahead of him, he knew he had to see this through. Then, one final detail from Rachel's research hit him like a gut punch. Lydia had filed for medical bankruptcy. The same week she started working double shifts. Sometimes, Snoop muttered to himself as he climbed into the waiting car, you gotta break the rules to fix the system. He had no idea just how true those words were about to become. Dave, his longtime driver, didn't ask questions when Snoop told him to follow Lydia's fading blue Toyota at a safe distance. That's why Snoop had chosen him for tonight. Dave knew the value of silence. They followed Lydia through the dimming streets of Longview, her taillights barely visible in the dark. Then, his phone buzzed again. Another update from Rachel. Found something else. Lydia's mother, Isabel Martinez, nurse for 30 years at Valley Medical. Retired last year due to health issues. That's all I could find. The pieces were finally starting to come together. And the picture they formed made his chest tighten. Up ahead, Lydia's car signaled right and pulled into a gas station. Through the windshield, Snoop watched as she counted out coins at the pump. Pull over here, he instructed Dave. Keep the engine running. Because whatever was going on with Lydia Martinez, Snoop was about to find out. Snoop Dogg followed an employee home. What he discovered will shock you. They watched as Lydia scraped together just enough gas to maybe get home. When she stepped inside the station to pay, Snoop noticed how she lingered near the food aisle, eyes locked on the sandwiches before walking away empty-handed. Yo, Dave, Snoop spoke, watching her through the rearview mirror. Dave exhaled, shaking his head. I know it's not my place, but I've seen that look before. My sister had it years ago, choosing between feeding her kids and keeping the lights on. Snoop leaned forward. What happened to your sister? Dave's eyes met his in the mirror. Someone helped her. Changed her life. That's why I've been driving for you for 7 years, Snoop. Because I believe you're the kind of person who helps when you see something wrong. Snoop didn't respond. He just nodded. Then, Lydia's car pulled out of the gas station, and they resumed their silent pursuit through streets that grew darker, rougher. Every few blocks, another streetlight was burned out, casting long shadows over cracked pavement. His phone buzzed again. Another message from Rachel. Tracked her medical facility payments, Innovative Care Solutions. They specialize in experimental cancer treatments. Most insurance companies won't cover them. Snoop's fist clenched. He knew about places like that, cutting-edge treatments that could save lives, but were deemed too risky by insurance companies. He'd actually considered buying one of those facilities last year, but his board had talked him out of it, warning of liability concerns. Now he wished he hadn't listened. Lydia's car finally pulled into a parking lot. The sign out front, Moonlight Apartments, hung crooked, missing a few letters. The building itself looked more like a last resort than a home. Wait here, Snoop said, opening his door. Dave hesitated. Snoop, be careful. This neighborhood. But Snoop was already walking. From a distance, he followed Lydia up the worn, exterior stairs. She moved slowly now, every step looking like it took real effort. He waited until she disappeared inside apartment 312 before approaching. Through the door, he could hear movement. A TV murmuring in the background. Running water. A cough, deep, strained, not right. And then, for the first time since this whole thing started, he hesitated. What was he actually planning to do? Show up unannounced at nearly midnight? The headlines flashed through his mind. Snoop Dogg stalks employee, crosses the line with late-night visit. But then, he heard something else. Quiet, muffled sobbing. Before he could second-guess himself, he knocked. The sound inside immediately stopped. A moment later, cautious footsteps approached. Who is it? Lydia's voice, trying to sound strong, but carrying an edge of fear. Snoop cleared his throat. Lydia, it's Snoop Dogg. I need to talk to you. Silence. Then, is something wrong with my work? The propulsion calculations? Snoop shook his head. Nah, your work's solid. I just want to talk. Please. More silence. Then the sound of locks, multiple locks, being undone. The door cracked open, revealing Lydia's face, wide-eyed, a mix of confusion and fear. I don't understand, she whispered. How are you here? Why? Before she could finish, a weak voice called from inside. Mija, who is it? Lydia's face paled. It's nothing, Mama, just a neighbor. But the voice came again, sharper. That's not a neighbor's voice. I know that voice. I've heard it on the TV. Snoop watched as Lydia closed her eyes, exhaled, then opened them again with a look that was part resignation, part quiet strength. Would you like to come in, Snoop? She asked formally, as if this were a scheduled meeting at Dreamwave Records and not a midnight encounter in a rundown apartment. She stepped aside, and Snoop walked in. What he saw hit him harder than any business deal, any concert crowd, any moment in his decades-long career. The apartment was spotless, but empty. A single hospital bed dominated the living room, surrounded by medical equipment, oxygen tanks, 4 bags. And in that bed, Isabel Martinez, Lydia's mother. Snoop had seen her medical ID photo in Rachel's report, a strong woman, warm smile, the look of someone who had spent her life caring for others. The woman in this bed was a ghost of that image. Hollow cheeks. Thin, frail arms. hair completely gone. But her eyes, those were still sharp. Alive. And right now, they were locked onto Snoop with an intensity that told him exactly where Lydia had gotten her strength from. "So," Isabel said, her voice steady despite the weakness in her body, "you're the man my daughter works 16-hour days for." And in that moment, standing in the doorway of apartment 312, Snoop Dogg, the man who had built an empire, who had spent decades reshaping the music industry, felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. He felt small. The conversation that followed would change everything, for Lydia, for Dreamwave Records, for the way Snoop saw his own empire. But that's a story for another day. Snoop Dogg followed an employee home. What he discovered will shock you. For now, he simply stood there, letting the weight of what he was seeing sink in. Everything was about to change. "Please," Isabel said, gesturing toward a worn folding chair. "Sit down and tell me why you followed my daughter home." Earlier that night, Snoop had settled into the back seat of his car, parked in the eerily quiet Dreamwave Records lot. The clock on his phone read late into the night. Normally, he'd be reviewing new beats, planning releases, not following one of his employees through the streets of Longview. "Keep your distance, Dave," he instructed his driver. "We don't want to spook her." Dave adjusted the rearview mirror. "Snoop, if I may, I've never seen you take this kind of personal interest in an employee before." Snoop watched as Lydia's Toyota pulled onto the main road, its brake lights flickering uncertainly in the darkness. He exhaled. "Neither have I." His phone buzzed, another message from Rachel. Her credit score dropped 200 points 3 months ago. Multiple credit card applications denied. Second mortgage on her mother's house rejected. The picture forming in his mind was one he didn't want to see. As they followed Lydia's car past the glittering storefronts and corporate glow of Dreamwave's business district, Snoop found himself lost in thought. "Dave," he said suddenly, "how much do we pay our level 3 engineers?" "I wouldn't know exactly, Snoop. But you know what they drive, don't you? You see them in the parking lot every day." Dave nodded slowly. "Most of them are in new rides, company lease program." Yet here was Lydia, driving a Toyota that had seen better days. "When was the last time you saw an engineer at her level take public transit to work?" Snoop asked. "Never, Snoop. Not in this area. The commute would be impossible. Especially for someone working double shifts," Snoop finished. They had left the pristine corporate district behind now. Lydia's car turned onto a boulevard lined with check-cashing stores, pawn shops, and fast food joints. The streetlights were dimmer, spaced farther apart. His phone lit up, an incoming call from HR. "Snoop," David's voice came through, cautious. "I just got an alert. Someone's been pulling detailed records on Lydia Martinez. Unauthorized access." "That would be me." A pause. "Snoop, with all due respect, there are protocols." "What's her salary?" What?" "Lydia Martinez. What do we pay her?" The sound of typing filled the line. "Standard rate for her level. $142,000 annually, plus benefits." "And that's good money, isn't it, David?" Snoop asked, watching as Lydia pulled into a rundown gas station. "Well, yes, for her experience level." "Then explain something to me," Snoop cut in, watching through the windshield. "Why is one of our best engineers counting quarters to buy gas?" Through the glass, he saw her at the pump, carefully feeding coins into the machine. The digital display creeping up, dollar by dollar. "Snoop, if an employee is struggling financially, we have programs. Programs that require paperwork. Approvals. Programs that put people's private struggles on display," Snoop said, voice tight. "Tell me something, David. How many employees actually use these programs?" Another pause. Then, less than 1%. "And why do you think that is?" Before David could answer, Lydia's car was moving again. "I have to go," Snoop said, ending the call. They were deep in the industrial district now, warehouses looming like hollow-eyed specters in the darkness. Lydia's Toyota turned onto a side street, then another, the surroundings growing progressively more worn. "Yo, Dave," Snoop said quietly. "I know this neighborhood." Dave glanced at him through the mirror. "Yeah? My sister used to live here. Before." Snoop trailed off. "Before what?" "Before things got better for her. Because this was where people ended up when they were running out of options. The houses were small, some showing signs of neglect. But Snoop noticed something. Despite the hardship, there were signs of dignity everywhere. Tiny gardens in repurposed containers. Handcrafted wind chimes on porches. People trying to carve out beauty in the midst of struggle. Lydia's car slowed, then turned into a crumbling parking lot beneath a flickering sign, Moonlight Apartments. "Stay here," Snoop instructed, opening his door. Dave hesitated. "Snoop, this area has people in it who deserve better," Snoop said simply. "That's all I need to know." He stepped into the shadows, watching as Lydia gathered her things, a stack of engineering drawings, a laptop bag, what looked like a small bag of medical supplies. She moved slowly now, exhaustion evident in every step. As she climbed the stairs to the third floor, Snoop saw her pause several times, gripping the railing for support. His hand twitched at his side, fighting the urge to step in and help. At the landing, Lydia fumbled with her keys, dropping them with a quiet curse. As she bent down, a few papers slipped from her stack, catching the night breeze. One of them drifted toward him. Snoop caught it. Snoop Dogg followed an employee home. What he discovered changed everything. As Snoop reached out, he caught the paper before it could blow away. His breath caught. It wasn't an engineering drawing. It was a medical bill. $147,892.43. Final notice. He looked up. Lydia had already disappeared into her apartment, leaving him alone in the dimly lit parking lot, holding the truth in his hands. The amount was more than her entire annual salary. She was already working double shifts, living in a rundown apartment, barely scraping by. Yet somehow, she was expected to pay this. Snoop climbed the stairs slowly, his mind racing. Outside apartment 312, faint sounds drifted through the thin walls, a TV murmuring, medical equipment humming, and then a weak cough. Then, Lydia's voice. "I'm sorry, Mama, the cafeteria was closed before I could take a break. But I'll make you something now." A frail but firm voice responded. "Mija, you need to eat too." "I had a big lunch," Lydia lied. Snoop felt something tighten in his chest. He had seen her forum message, begging for leftover food. "Please, Mama, the treatment is working. That's all that matters." "Not if it kills my daughter in the process," her mother replied, her voice sharp with concern. Snoop raised his hand to knock, then hesitated. What right did he have to intrude on this? But then, his mother's words echoed in his mind. The right thing to do and the easy thing to do are rarely the same. So, he knocked. Silence. Then cautious footsteps. "Who is it?" Lydia's voice was laced with exhaustion. Snoop took a deep breath, knowing this moment would change everything. "Lydia, it's Snoop Dogg. I need to speak with you." A long, tense pause. He could feel her heartbeat through the door. "Snoop?" Her voice cracked slightly. "Is something wrong? Did I make a mistake in the calculations?" "No mistakes, Lydia. I just want to talk." Locks clicked. The door cracked open, revealing her wide, confused eyes. "I don't understand. How are you here? Why?" Before she could say more, a voice from inside called out. "Mija, QNES?" Lydia's mask slipped for just a moment. No longer an engineer at a top music label, just a daughter, fighting to save her mother's life. "It's nothing, Mama," she called back, but the older woman wasn't convinced. That voice. I know that voice. From the television. Lydia closed her eyes briefly, weighing her options. When she reopened them, there was something else in her gaze, pride. She stepped back. Would you like to come in, Snoop? Inside, the apartment was immaculately kept but painfully sparse. A hospital bed dominated the living room, surrounded by medical equipment. And in that bed lay Isabel Martinez, a woman who had once spent 30 years as a nurse, now reduced to a frail shadow of herself. But her eyes, sharp, intelligent, still burned with strength. So, Isabel said, her voice steady despite her weak frame. You're the man my daughter works 16-hour days for. There was no accusation. But there was a challenge in her tone. Snoop understood, in that instant, exactly where Lydia got her strength. Lydia started to explain, but her mother cut her off. No, Mija. If the CEO of Dreamwave comes to our home at midnight, he must have a good reason. Isabel turned her piercing gaze to Snoop. Don't you? For the first time in years, Snoop Dogg felt small. He looked around, the medical bills, the half-empty cupboards, the single apple in a fruit bowl that was probably Lydia's entire dinner. Yes, he said finally. I do. But I'm starting to think my reason for coming here isn't as important as what I'm seeing now. Isabel's expression softened slightly. Sit, she said, gesturing to a worn folding chair. And tell us why you followed my daughter home. Lydia stiffened. You followed me? I did, Snoop admitted, sitting down. Because something wasn't adding up. And I needed to understand. Isabel tilted her head. And do you? Snoop pulled the medical bill from his pocket and set it on the table. I'm starting to. Lydia's face drained of color when she saw it. Snoop, I can explain. You don't have to, he said gently. Not yet. First, tell me about this treatment that's working. Lydia and Isabel exchanged a knowing look. Years of silent battles passed between them in that single glance. Finally, Isabel spoke. It's an experimental immunotherapy, she said. Insurance won't cover it. They say it's unproven. But it's saving my life. Snoop's jaw clenched. At what cost? Lydia lifted her chin. Whatever it takes. And in that simple statement, Snoop heard everything, her determination, her exhaustion, her fear, and her love. He had artists complaining about their royalties while driving their third luxury car. And here was Lydia Martinez, a brilliant engineer, working herself to the bone, living on next to nothing, just to keep her mother alive. Snoop stood abruptly, his mind already racing. Lydia, he said firmly. Take tomorrow off. Her head snapped up. But my projects. We'll be there the next day. I can't. Yes, you can. Paid leave. Retroactive for all the overtime you never claimed. Lydia opened her mouth to protest, but no words came out. Isabel squeezed her daughter's hand. Mija, let someone else carry the weight for once. Snoop turned toward the door, pulling out his phone. Where are you going? Lydia asked. To fix this. The next morning, before sunrise, Snoop stormed into Dreamwave HQ. Rachel, set up an emergency board meeting. No exceptions. Snoop, it's not even dawn. Then wake them up. By 8 a.m., the board was seated, staring at him in confusion. What's our most valuable asset? He asked. Our intellectual property? Our market position? Snoop shook his head. Wrong. He tossed Lydia's file onto the table. It's our people. And we're failing them. For the next hour, he laid everything out. The impossible choices. The financial burdens. The broken system. Industry standard healthcare isn't good enough anymore. He pulled up numbers. We spend more on studio gear than it would cost to cover experimental treatments for every employee who needs them. Silence. Then, one by one, heads started nodding. By late afternoon, the votes were in. Effective immediately. Complete healthcare coverage, including experimental treatments. Retroactive overtime pay. Childcare and housing support. A new, employee-first corporate structure. Snoop wasn't just changing a company. He was starting a revolution. And it all began with one desperate message in an employee forum.